I'm going to go in the tack, a couple other tacks, test fit. I've got my safety shoes on. Howdy, my name's Workshop Lewis, and in one of the previous episodes, we got the first latching mechanism set up for the tailgate. And in this episode, hopefully we can get the second latching mechanism to all work and have a fully functioning tailgate that I can sit on, crack open a drink, and enjoy the ute for what a ute should be. So to do that, we've got to cut out a panel on here, work out how we're going to attach it to the tailgate that we've got, get the latching mechanism bolted in, and then work out a reinforced plate on either side that we can then bolt the other side of the latching mechanism to. So I think the first thing we need to do is just cut out a panel from this tailgate so then we can start visualizing how it's all going to work together and how we can get this E30 M3 to have a fully functioning tailgate. We now have two pretty nifty panels that all we need to do, and I mean by all we need to do, I mean like there's a lot to do, but all we need to do is work out how that panel sits here. So we've got to cut some off the bottom, cut some off the top, but we want to make sure that's in the right spot because we need to get the latching mechanism sitting in the right height, above the indicator and above the tail light, but somewhere about there. Mark, cut, test fit. Don't forget to test fit. And then just kind of weld this panel onto this frame. That's simple, eh? Sick. Cut, check. Kind of makes sense already. There's definitely too much thickness here, so we'll trim all of that down. And then we do need to remember that this still needs to be brought over because this is tilted out, which I'll fix later on, but I've just got to keep that in mind. You can see the nut on this side is just about the same height as the top of the tail light. So I don't think we want to go down any further. I do think we want to cut off the top a little bit. And I might use this reinforcing plate as a bit of a guide and just lop the top off. But we're getting a little bit closer and I'm being fairly conservative with what I'm cutting off, making sure that I don't have to just put it back on. But we're getting there. But, ooh, actually, we're gonna have to cut a large section of this bit out to make it so we can fit the tail light in. Interesting. I've done some thinking and I think I've cut this up as much as I need to understand that I am just gonna have to make this panel again. This detail that comes out interferes with the chassis side, and if I cut that out, I need to replicate this radius. By the time I've done all of that, it's just gonna be easier for me to remake this panel. This distance from where the latch hits the radius or the fold isn't big enough. What this has done is made it so I understand what I need to do and how I need to make the panel, and we're just gonna have to make both sides. I've gone next door and with their folder, folded up a piece of, this is 1.8, and it's too tight of a radius. I had a look at their folder and it's a pretty good folder, and there is an adjustment on there so you can pull the bite, like the teeth back, and then get a different radius, which is, where did I put that piece? Where did I put that piece? There it is. Which now means we've got a little bit more of a radius on this bottom one, and it should look just a little bit more OEM. This is just too tight. This is good. So I still don't want to film next door. I'm gonna draw up what I need to draw up, fold it, and then I can go through what needs to happen with the next process. I'm not completely sure we're going to use the latching mechanism that I picked up out of the VZ, VY tailgate, just because the piece of rod that goes to the handle is a little bit shorter. One of the tailgates out of, what do they use? The D-Maxes. Their latching mechanism can be removed from the wire or the rod. So I can get that as long as I want, fold it up or put some kinks into it and get it the right length without having to weld it. So I think that's probably the route I'm gonna go. I'll come back when I've got 2 right angled pieces that I can then work out how the latch goes onto. Tailgate. It is clamped in, but it's sitting there properly. Damn that bone. Oh, good, someone answered it straight away. This is the panel. Now, it can sit on the inside, but I do need to cut out some of the inner wheel arch that I've made, and then once that's sitting down low enough, I can mark over the top and start cutting it down. This fold is definitely long as well. I need to work that out. This is going to be way easier to build off of here instead of trying to modify the VZ or VU one. I'll cut out some bits on either side of the wheel arch, get this into the right spot, mark out the height, and I'll probably give it just a little bit just in case. I did just put a post on the E30 SA page asking if anyone has a spare lip or like wing, something. I feel like there's something missing on this back of the tailgate, like a detail, a feature, but I can't quite picture it. So if you're in South Australia and you've got one sitting around, I don't want to keep it. I just want to work out what I need to look for, basically. Let me know, Facebook or Instagram. When it comes to the final product, I'm probably going to need to cut down here and either radius it across or angle it. So I know I'm not going to need this, but I don't need to cut it off just yet. So I'll leave it as is. Maybe I can modify this panel. With that clearance, we now are able to get this out here. And that's probably even more than I needed, but again, doesn't really matter. So we can put the skin back on, get these panels sitting hard up against it, and then start working out what we're cutting and how it's all going to sit together. The panel that I just made, having a look and a good think about everything that is going on with the tailgate. I think the next thing we need to do is we've got the frame, we've got the E30 skin. We need to get all of them in line. So then we know everything is sitting where it needs to sit. We then know how much clearance we've got down the back for the latch, and we can work out how everything's going to fit together. So I've got to cut out a little bit of the E30 skin, get that set back. Let's see if that's enough. I'm trying to cut out as little as possible, and there's still 2 layers in the top here. So the top's still gonna keep some kind of rigidity. And when it comes to like coming down, we can still add another thickness with a little radius and make it look nice and neat. But let's see if that works. And then maybe cut out more. Almost certainly cut out more. So that's about straight down. We got maybe 5 mil on the frame, and then I still haven't worked out what I'm going to do with that bit. Whether or not I'm covering over the top, or yeah, it's a little bit of a mystery to me right now, but we're getting closer. I think that's about right. We're right on the edge of the radius of the frame, but we are still going to have the panel come up with a slight curve, and we can blend that into this top corner. There is still something missing on the back, and with the M3 there's this little, comes up a little bit higher. There's an extra detail, and I think I'm probably gonna look at replicating something like that, so then it just gives this back bit a little bit of a beefier look. If you have a wing or a lip or anything in South Australia, let me know, because I do want to try a bunch of different things before I do completely modify what I've done already. But that is now sitting in the right spot. We've got a little bit of a gap underneath, I think. There's going to be a lot of fine tuning just to get it to look like natural. I also think that the gap from the frame, or the distance from the internal frame to this outer face, is not going to change. So I should be able to make up a couple of pieces of metal that we weld to the skin that can hook around the back of the frame, and it can just sit there permanently or semi-permanently in the first instance. So then this can stay attached to the frame and we can start working with all of this as one assembly, and the tailgate just slowly becoming more and more complete. Sick. So I've got this piece. I ordered this a while ago. I can't even remember what I was going to use it for. Maybe something inside the tub. But it's going to work. So I can use this lip on the back. I'm going to take the skin off, work out where the hinges are, cut some clearance, and then this can hook back behind the frame, put the skin back on, and draw the radius. And then I need to just panel beat a little lip into it. So it should sit, that little bit that I'm going to panel beat will meet the bottom of the skin, and then that will get butt welded together the entire way through. So we are sitting up on the outer part of the hinge, which I need to think about whether or not we want to cut around and clear that hinge, or if I put just a little fold in this panel down and then flatten off again. So then we've still got that right point, because we've got about a 10mm gap between the chassis line and this panel. Really difficult to show you because it's like right in there. I think what I'm going to do is see if this is short enough to fit in their folder next door, or their brake, because if it does fit in there, I can just bend it up and it's done. Yes. No? Yes. No. So that is sitting up way too high. So it does need to come down, but then it means I can taper off the details on the inside later, because that can go underneath. Yes. Hopefully that made sense to someone, and if it doesn't immediately, it may later on. I'm going to go next door and put some folds in this and come back. If it fits. I don't know if it fits. I'll go check that. I'll be back. It quite literally just fit in. I had to push the teeth out like 10mm aside just to make it so it fits in. I haven't test fitted it. You can see the radius on the outside here. That should get pushed further out because we've chained this, but let's just see if this is going to work. Yes, that worked perfectly. I have noticed that the chassis in the middle has kind of started to bow up, so I need to push that down, but either side I just got the bend just right, which is good because I have a tendency to not get it just right. But we're getting better. What do I need to do? I need to clean up this bottom line of the chassis. If I just take that down a little bit. Yes! Yes! This is fitting good. This bottom line on the tailgate skin is not really straight. So I am going to need to straighten that up, but while I'm doing it, I can bring that cut up a little bit higher. But before I do that, I need to panel beat this bottom panel up and around, so then I know how much I've got. It's a lot to think about. Words, god damn it. This is starting to look and feel like a tailgate, because once this is welded to the skin, we can get the top attached and the skin can just stay on there. Better, much better. Words. I may have cheated a little bit, but I have learned that there are some things that are best left to the professionals. So I went down to Southern Classic and Customs, and if you're a classic car person or have ever heard of them, you know they're kind of the best car builders. They're really well known within the car building community all around Australia, and they do some amazing work. So I took the panel down to Adam, had my scribed line, told him what I needed to do, and he was like, yep, no worries. It turned out amazing, follows the line perfectly, and if we put the skin on, it's spot on. It looks like a professional has done it, because a professional has done it. So now I can get my line, transfer it onto the skin, cut it, and we are going to do a butt weld the entire way through. I want it to be one panel. I don't want it to overlap and then have like spot welds or anything like that. So we can sort this all out, and that's one panel done on the E30 tailgate. So whether you've got like a couple of $100,000 to put into a build, full custom, or just a restoration, or you've just got a little panel you need and you're in Adelaide or South Australia and you need something sorted out, go down to Southern Classic and Customs. They're really good at what they do. With that said, I'm going to clean up this bottom bit, get it all ready for marking it up and then cutting and welding it together so we can get this base panel onto the tailgate panel. Prep both sides. I have heaps of prep work to do on the rest of this panel, but I want to get it to the point where it's a full tailgate and then I can prep it after that. We now need to mark, cut, and then tack it together. I'm not going to completely weld it because, again, I don't know if this is the exact thing that's going to work or the final plan. I think I'm pretty close, but let's not ruin it. Cool. Oh! Oh! Put a couple of 3mm spacers down just so it won't move any lower. This goes here, and we're a little bit high, but that's where we can cut down, get the height right, and then that can be fixed later. We're pretty close here. And again, we do still need to mess around with these rear quarters. So there's still plenty of an adjustment and movement that needs to be done, but that looks pretty good. With the butt weld, it shouldn't warp too much because we've got this hard angle right along the whole way, the bottom of the panel. And then we do have a detail in here that should help with just keeping things good. Tack, a couple other tacks, test fit. I've got my safety shoes on. Let's hope this is the right thing to be doing. Looks like an E30 tailgate to me already, doesn't it? How sick is that? Test fit it on the car, see what it looks like, because could be wrong. And I might need to grind them all off and start again. Let's see. That's so cool. So I think there's a little bit of panel beating to be done on the chassis side, just because when I've cut it, it's kind of deformed it a little bit. But that is really good. That's so sick. I need to think about this a bunch again, because I think it would be the side pieces next. Okie dokie. So we've got the bottom panel and I'm trying to work out what we need to do next. I think I have to fix my rear quarter panels, cutting or removing the welds from down the bottom, pulling it out, and then hopefully that pushes in the top. As you can see, it's on quite a bit of an angle out and we need to fix that. So then I can do a reinforcing plate on the side, attach the catch up the top, and then we can work out how the latch is going to fit into the tailgate. I've loosened it off the bottom. I'm going to do a good weld up the top and then cut these welds down the side. So hopefully it can just pivot around. It appears to have done absolutely nothing for what I needed. I can pull it out, but it only pulls it out. It doesn't rotate it around at all. I don't know what to do. Probably got to think about it a little bit more. There are a lot of different pieces to this puzzle and there is a lot of thinking to be done. So with the panels the way they're sitting, if you pull out, it's easier to push in. So I think I'm going to have to mess around with the rear quarters before I can finalize the tailgate. I've ratchet strapped the panels in to bring it into where it wants to sit, and it's pushed the corners out both sides. So this bottom panel that we just welded on isn't quite sitting correctly, and this is why I've only just welded it on, because you've got to make sure every gap works together. The entire time I've been thinking I need to build the tailgate and then I can start attaching panels, but I think I might need to start attaching some panels to build the tailgate. So bear with me, this is getting complicated. I did a bunch of thinking and I came up with this bracket. So this is a bit of 75 by 25. I've profiled the inside, profiled the outside, and it just sits in there nicely, provides a bit of protection to the indicator, gives me a little bit of support, and I can weld this to the frame now. And then we still need to get this over a little bit. I think we are at a big stage of the build. I've had a full weekend to think about what the next step is. Now that we've got these capping plates, we can work out where the latch is going to go on these capping plates. We need to work out where they're going to go before we can finalize the tailgate, which means we're done building the tailgate for now. We need to start attaching panels. Yes, that is so sick. And like, look at this. The tailgate clears the bumper. The internal mechanism works. Now the next step is removing all of the panels. Roof, rear window, base. We've already got the wheel arches out. I've done a lot of grinding and a lot of like metal work, and there is a lot of dust on the inside. So I need to clean all of that out so it doesn't rust. And there are some bits on the inside that I need to finish painting, and I need to weld up both wheel arches on either side completely before I can attach all of the other panels. So I'm just going to take everything off, tailgate, rear bumper, anything that isn't attached permanently, and start working out which panels I need to attach first, and cleaning everything up and prepping everything so nothing can rust on the inside. Okie dokie, I've cleaned up the inside, and before we get to doing the panels, there are some things that while I was cleaning up, I realized I needed to do. Yesterday before I left, I sent an email to my engineer in regards to the hinge mechanism that I've got for the tailgate. I think I'm over-engineering it, and just like this frame that I built, when the engineer saw that, he was like, that's too much, man. You gotta, if someone rear ends you and there's no weak points, the whole frame's gonna move forward and crush me. And I kind of got the feeling that I was over-engineering it. I welded this in originally, because that's the size of metal that I got, thinking that I would have to maybe sink this down into the frame, but I'm gonna be able to make it work as is. So I sent him an email asking if I can cut it and just weld in 90 mil of this plate. And he's gone, yeah, you're right. You did over-engineer that, and you can cut it and you can weld it. So I think the next step, we just need to cut it, remove the welds on the back, weld this in, done. You're probably asking yourself, Workshop Lewis, didn't you just clean out this entire area? Yeah, I did. And it's while doing that that I realized that this needed to be done first. So it's a little bit of like a 1 step forward, 2 steps back, or 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I don't know how many steps I took forward or backwards, but it needed to be done, and it needed to be done before I attached any other panels. Sick. Got my safety shoes on. Let's weld this bad boy in. Ain't the prettiest welds, but they're definitely going to hold the whole tailgate. And then again, once we put the straps down, this won't be taking a huge amount of weight, and I'll leave these stops in. Another step done, slightly closer to attaching panels. The next step is welding in both of the M3 wheel arches to the chassis, because when we put the big ute wheel arches in, we're not going to be able to get to this again. I've punched some holes in it already. They're not big enough. You want to use, say, like at least a 6, if not maybe an 8, to then get a really good plug weld, a nice size plug weld. So I'm going to have to drill these out, weld this on. So when I welded this back panel on originally, anything below the frame got welded in, both sides, so it is just the top. And there are some spots where I can weld the panels directly together, so I don't need to get the full penetration into a big hole. Both wheel arches are now welded in, and that's going to add a lot of strength to it. They're both ready to paint with just this thick old primer, but I want to make it so I can paint all of the other bits at the same time, so I can just do it all at once. Remember how I said 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or whatever, steps in one direction and then some steps in the other direction? Let's go back to the hinge. We're here again. And I wish I wasn't, because it means I've forgotten something. We've welded this plate in, but I only ever tacked the 2 outer barrels to the plate, which isn't very strong. And it means I never got any welds underneath, and I'm gonna need to put more welds on the top. And I don't know what I'm gonna do about that. Because I can't weld underneath while it's in there, unless I can grind the paint off and maybe weld it to the frame, which might be strong enough, but dang it. While I work out what I'm going to do about the hinge situation, we can still go on with other things. These slats have gotten just a little bit of surface rust, but we're welding the bed straight to them, just plug welding, the same way we did the wheel arches. So we need to sand all of the slats, get them back to a clean point, and then spray some weld through primer on them, just so they're all prepped, ready to go. And while I'm doing it, I'll think about how I'm going to fix this hinge situation. All sanded, time for some weld through primer.